Hey guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. It is time for another reading wrap up. We are doing the months of May through August. I cannot believe it has already been another 4 months, but these last few months were really great. I had a lot of good summer reads and just reads in general. But just to give you guys some quick little stats, in May I read 10 books. In June I read 4 books. In July I read 5 books. And in August, I read 11 books. Let's start off with talking about all the books I read in May. The first book I read was The Haunting of Maddie Clare by Simone St. James. This one was a more paranormal thriller horror. It's definitely got some spooky scenes, but I wouldn't say that this is like super scary. I definitely think if you're looking to get introduced to the horror genre, this one actually would be a good one. We're following 3 different people in this one. We're following Sarah, Alistair, and Matthew. So Alistair and Matthew are both kind of like ghost hunters, like paranormal. They chase paranormal activity, and Alistair essentially writes stories about them. And Sarah is kind of like somebody who does temp jobs. So she waits for her agency to call her with essentially a new job. So this one gets presented to her and she's like, all right, let's do it. They all get summoned to investigate the haunting of Maddie Clare. This one was honestly very fun, very interesting. It's, like I said, got those good spooky horror vibes. And I will say there was a bit of romance in this one that I was not expecting, but I was not mad at it. And I definitely recommend this one. It wasn't like the best book I've ever read, but it was still really good. I gave this one a 3.5. The next book I ended up reading was Heartstopper by Alice Osman. This one I read in my reading the highest and lowest rated book on my TBR video. And this one was honestly just so much fun. It is a graphic novel, so as you're reading it, you do have like little pictures and stuff like that. This was the first one I've read like that, and it was so much fun. I read this in like maybe 2 hours. It's just so fun to flip through and see the story essentially. And what's also really fun about this one is that there is a Netflix TV show on it. This one is more YA though, so if you're not into YA, you might not like this. I'm not typically into YA, but this was such a fun cozy little read and I really enjoyed it. We are following Nick and Charlie in this one. They both go to the same high school and Nick is on the rugby team and Charlie is asked to join the rugby team because they were like, oh, he runs track, he's really fast, we need that. So Nick and Charlie end up developing this friendship and we essentially just follow that. Charlie kind of develops a crush on Nick and we're following that friendship develop into maybe something more. It's so cute. It's so fast to read. Definitely do want to pick up the next one because this one was just so much fun and I would love to see where it goes. But this one was a 4-star. The next book I ended up picking up was Lotus by Jennifer Hartman. This one I picked up because I had read Still Beating by this author and I really liked it, so I wanted another book by them and I ended up picking up this one. This one is following Sydney and Oliver. Oliver, when he was around 8 or 9 years old, ends up getting kidnapped, and 20 years later he ends up coming back. We're essentially going through Oliver acclimating again to the world that he was taken away from and how he has to adjust to all these changes and technology. And not only that, but he also has a brother and a best friend, Sydney, that are waiting for him when he gets back home. This one can get a little dark because, one, we are dealing with Oliver who got kidnapped, but there are also just kind of hard topics in this, so do be aware of that going in. But this one was just such a good story. It was a little emotional, but if you like a thriller-esque vibe in your romances, I definitely think this is going to be the one for you. But I ended up giving this one 4 stars. The next book I ended up reading was Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay McLeod Chapman. This was the worst rated book on my TBR. And sadly, I kind of agree with it. This one is kind of like a satire story, but it's taking a play on politics, which if you don't like politics, you honestly might not like this one. I don't mind so much politics, but what kind of didn't really sit well with me in this one is the horror aspect of it. I'm not one for horror to be very sexual, and this one came off so sexual, and it was just kind of uncomfortable and just didn't sit well with me while reading it. So this one just didn't get a good rating for me because of that. This story follows Noah, who starts to notice some weird changes in his parents. They have been watching this news channel, and since watching the news channel, they've been very weird. They keep telling him that he needs to wake up and open his eyes, and one day he tries to get in contact with his parents and he realizes that he can't get a hold of them. So he tries to get in contact with his brother to check on them, but he can't get in contact with his brother either. So he decides he needs to go find his parents and figure out what's happening. And when he finds them, his parents are not his parents. They're almost like possessed in a way. And anybody who watches this news channel starts to get possessed in a way. And that's essentially what the story is following. The story had promise. I really thought that I was going to like this. But like I said, what really just didn't work for me was the horror aspect of it. So I ended up giving this one a 2-star, but I do still think you should check this one out if the premise sounds really interesting to you, because I know so many people that gave this 5 stars and loved it. The next book I ended up picking up was We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kleiwer. This one was a very highly anticipated read for me because I had heard so many great things about this story and the spookiness of it and everything like that. And I will say this one did end up living up to the hype. This is following this couple that buys this house, and one day this family knocks on the door asking to see if they can take a little tour of the house because the father used to live there when he was younger and he wanted to show his family his old house. Lots of crazy twists and turns happen in this, and it was honestly such a wild ride. There are definitely scenes in this that will give spooky vibes if that's what you're looking for. But I will say the only downfall of this book is that I feel like it was not wrapped up very well in the end for me. I was left with so many questions, and I'm hoping that we're going to get another one, which I doubt we are, but I want another book to answer those questions. Either way, this one was a 4.25. It was so much fun. I did not want to put this one down, and I was required to because I was reading this as part of a video, and I did not want to stop reading it. So definitely recommend this one, especially for the spooky season that's coming up, because this one will definitely give those vibes. The next book I ended up picking up was Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This one was another anticipated read for me because I had heard so many great things about it, and I just didn't have an opportunity to pick it up. But I ended up picking it up for this video, and I'm so glad I did because this romance was the sweetest romance. It is a pregnancy trope, so if you don't like pregnancy tropes, I still highly recommend you read this because I don't really like a pregnancy trope, but this one was done so well that you don't even mind that that's what it is. This one we're following Win and Bo, who meet at Win's best friend's Halloween party. They kind of like hit it off. They decide they want to have a little one-night stand, and unfortunately Win ends up pregnant. She gives Bo the option to kind of like be a part of it or to be out, but he was very much like, no, I'm in this. I want to be a part of this. And we're essentially following their little journey, seeing them become friends, get to know each other, and then seeing their feelings develop and everything. It was just such a fun, cozy read. I highly recommend this one, and I can't wait to read the next book in the series, but this one ended up being a 4.25 for me. I really enjoyed this. The next book I ended up picking up was Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This one was another book that I had heard so many great things about, so I was finally able to pick it up, and I'm so glad I did because this book was so good. This one's following 2 fathers whose sons are murdered, and they go on this quest to find who killed their sons because the police are just not getting anything done. They want answers, so they take it into their own hands to get those answers, and these 2 dads will do anything to get those answers. This can get kind of violent, so if you're not one for like violence, maybe this isn't for you, but this story was told so well. The grief, the anger that you read in this book, you start to feel. This was just told so well, and you go through every emotion in this book, and the way it wraps up in the end was just so good. I cannot wait to read more from S.A. Cosby because this book just showed how good of a writer he is, and I cannot wait to read other books by him, but this one was so good. Highly recommend if this one has been on your radar. But I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. The next book I ended up reading was The Favorites by Lane Fargo. This one was actually my book club book pick for May with my friends, and this one I enjoyed so thoroughly. This was just such a fun, drama-esque book that was so entertaining, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend the audio for this because the audio really just brought this back to life. This story is told with kind of like an interview style. So like one chapter will be the interview and the other chapter will actually be the story. And the interview chapters each had different voice actors, which gave the characters such a personality, and they were funny, bitter. It was like literally just watching like a reality TV show. Like I thought I was watching a documentary on these two figure skaters. But this one we are following Katarina and Heath. They were high school friends, and Katarina loved ice skating, and Heath ends up becoming her partner, and their whole goal is to essentially go to the Olympics, and we're essentially following that story of how they get there, what happens, everything like that. But everything that happens in this was just so much fun to consume. I would highly recommend this. This was a 4.5. The next book I ended up picking up was The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This book had been on my TBR for I think maybe 2 years now. I've had this forever and I just haven't had a chance to pick it up, but I'm so glad I did because Kristen Hanna's books are just so emotional and heart-wrenching. This story broke me. It was so sad, but also just so freaking good. Like, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. This story's following a family that ends up trying to leave Texas to go to California to get away from all the dust storms that were happening during that time and find work and money and a better life. Just know that this book is going to be sad, but it's so good. It's written so beautifully. Kristen Hanna honestly just never fails to write a beautiful book, and this was no exception. I highly recommend this one. This one ended up being a 4.5. If you have this one on your TBR, do not let it sit there any longer because it's worth it. And the last book I ended up reading in May was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I had been putting this one off because I did not really like Divine Rivals as much as everybody else did. And a lot of people who loved Divine Rivals did not like this one. So I just thought that this one was just going to be a miss for me. So I kept putting it off. But I finally read it, and surprisingly, I liked this one more than Divine Rivals. This one picks up right after that one ends, so I'm not going to give a whole lot of detail on it since it is the second book in the series, but I think everything wrapped up honestly really well in this one. The story, Rebecca Ross just has a way of writing. Her writing is very beautiful. The story was told very nicely, and I overall had a really good time with it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Honestly, I enjoyed it. I really don't have much to say that's not really going to spoil it, but I would personally recommend if you've read Divine Rivals and have been putting this one off to read this one because I think it was pretty good. Now we're getting into the books I read in June. I only read 4 books in June, and the first book I read was Passion Project by London Sperry. That book I ended up reading on Kindle. I got it on Libby. I really enjoyed the setting of it. It is a New York setting, which I think was just so much fun. Passion Project follows Henry and Bennett. Bennett is kind of like going through some grief. She lost her boyfriend, and we're essentially following her journey of getting over her grief and just starting to put herself out there again. Henry comes into play because she was supposed to go on a date with Henry, but she ends up standing him up, but a few hours later ends up running into him, and they end up coming into this agreement where Henry decides that he's going to help her find her passion because right now she's kind of just like a temp, like she works temp jobs, but she doesn't have anything solid in her life. This one was a 3.5 for me. For the most part, I enjoyed the story, but I just didn't really love Bennett's character. She wasn't the best, but I really did enjoy Henry's character. Overall, I think this was a fun, quick romance. So if you're looking for something like that, I think you'd really enjoy this. The next book I picked up was also on Libby. It was Hidden Nature by Nora Roberts. This one I picked up because it was a romance thriller, which sounded so much fun to me. And this one was just okay. I was not blown away by any means, but the story was still fun to read. We're following Sloan, who is a natural resources police officer, and her partner end up going to this convenience store. And when she walks in, she ends up getting shot and kind of just puts like a little pause in her career. She ends up moving back home so that she can kind of like heal up, rest, and get her strength back. And during that time, she ends up coming across a case that kind of just like sticks with her. And she keeps looking up on it, checking on it, and seeing if there's similar cases that have been occurring nearby. In the meantime, she also starts developing a friendship, I guess, with this guy, Nash. And he and his brother essentially start a construction company in the little town that she grew up in. We're essentially following that storyline. The thriller side is what I really didn't love so much. The ending was so anticlimactic that it was laughable in my opinion. But if you really like thriller and romance, I guess you should check this one out. It did have really good reviews on Goodreads, so I might be like the outlier here. I just honestly, that ending just did not do it for me, and I think that's why I rated it so low. I did give this 3 stars. it was just okay to me. The next book I ended up picking up was Whistle by Linwood Barkley. This one I was actually super excited about. I heard a lot of great things about it, and I was really in the mood for a spooky book. I will say that this one did not deliver on the spooky aspect for me. If you're trying to get into horror, I think this one would be a good place to start because I don't think it's honestly that scary. But this one is following Annie and Charlie. Her and her son end up going to this small town to kind of just get away for a while and decompress. They end up finding this little train set, and lots of weird things start to happen after that. We go back and forth between present and past, and we kind of like get an understanding of what's happening and how we got to where we are. For the most part, I did enjoy this. It was an interesting concept. This took a turn that I wasn't expecting, and I'm not sure how I liked the ending. Overall, I gave this one a 3.5. It was still entertaining, and I still did have a good time reading it, but it wasn't as scary as I wanted it to be, and the ending just kind of fell flat for me. And the last book I ended up picking up in June was Love Interest by Claire Gilmore. This was like a little workplace rivalry romance, but I will say the rivalry aspect didn't last as long as I thought it was going to, which is not a bad thing, but I just wanted there to be a little more tension before they kind of like gave into it. We're following Cassie and Alex. Both of them were applying for the same position, but Alex ends up getting the position over Cassie, so immediately she doesn't like him. They end up working together on this side project for the media department in their company, and we're essentially following their little relationship and how they end up becoming more. And this one was cute. It's fun. I definitely think both characters are likable, and the story's still really good. This one ended up being a 3.5 for me. Now for the books that I read in July, I ended up reading 5 books this month. The first being The Haunting of Blackwood House by Darcy Coates. You guys already know I love Darcy Coates. Her horror books just give off such a good amount of spooky vibes. And this one, although I didn't like it as much as her other books, definitely delivered in the spooky department. In this story, we're following Mara, who her childhood was essentially surrounded by her parents being spiritualists. So she grew up around seances and lots of paranormal-esque vibes. But because she grew up around this, she knows it's all fake. So there's no such thing as ghosts, no such thing as anything paranormal, essentially. She ends up deciding that she wants to buy a house, and of course she stumbles upon Blackwood House that she absolutely loves and she wants to buy it, but rumor has it it's haunted, and she's like, no, it's not. She moves into the house, and of course spooky things start happening, but she is so in denial about everything and anything that happens in the house. And we're essentially following that. The spooky vibes in this, though, are on point. Like, if you like a haunted house as much as I do, this was a haunted house. It was spooky. It gave. And I would highly recommend for that aspect. The main character, I did not like her. She was so frustrating. She just got to the point where, because she grew up with spiritualists, she knew everything and nobody else could tell her otherwise, and everyone else was wrong. That mindset became so annoying. This was a 3.5. Everything aside from the main character, everything about this was so good. The haunted vibes were haunting, and I would definitely recommend for spooky season. The next book I ended up reading was Mile High by Liz Tom Ford. This was my book club book pick for the month of July. This one I was super excited to get to because I've heard so many great things about the Windy City series. So to finally get to start it, I was really excited. And I honestly am still excited to continue the series. In this one, we're following Stevie and Xanders. Xanders is a player for the Chicago's hockey team, and Stevie works for the company that flies the team's jet to all of their different away games. Xanders and Stevie right off the bat have like this enemies, rivals kind of vibe going on. They don't like each other. They try to push each other's buttons. But of course, eventually it leads to feelings and stuff like that. And we're essentially following just like their journey. Both Stevie and Xanders kind of have their issues that they're going through with their parents. And I think that part of the story kind of got really annoying to me, mainly because of how repetitive it was. But aside from the repetitive aspect of it, I do think the story was still entertaining. I really liked Stevie's character. She was very interesting to read about. She sounded like such a cool person. I just wanted to keep reading about her. She was just so much fun. And Xander's was an interesting character. He wasn't like my favorite by any means. Overall, I gave this a 3.5. It wasn't the best book I've read, but it wasn't the worst book either. I'm definitely interested to see where this series is gonna go. The next book I ended up picking up was The Unworthy by Agustina Bastarrica. This one I had high hopes for because of the concept of this. It sounded like it was going to be so interesting. We're following this kind of climate catastrophe that happens that causes some people to get infected. And we're following this woman's journey of this catastrophe that happens and her entering into this like almost convent-esque kind of vibe. The story was told in her diary entries. Like there are literally parts of this that just end because somebody came in, so she had to stop writing. And I think writing in that way was interesting, but I also think it kind of like took away from the story because I found myself interested in learning more about the other characters we're introduced to, or even more about the climate catastrophe that happens. And we don't really get that because that's not what she's writing about in her journal entries. The story kind of just like falls a little flat for me. The concept was really interesting and I'd still recommend you check it out if it does sound interesting to you. But I think for me, I just wanted a little bit more detail that we just didn't get because everything was coming from her POV. So this one was a 3-star for me. There were descriptions in this that kind of gave off creepy vibes, but I wouldn't say that this is scary at all. There's just some unsettling things that occur here. The next book I picked up was When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I did also listen to the audiobook for this and I would recommend it because it made this a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. It gives off fairy tale-esque vibes without it actually being fairy tale-esque. We have like a big bad wolf, but not really. And something about this was just, it was such a fun concept. I enjoyed this so much. We're following Jess, who one night ends up finding this little boy outside of her house, and the little boy's running away from his father. So she decides that she's going to take the little boy and help him because his father doesn't seem like a good person. This book is not what you're going to expect it to be. And I think that was so much fun because I went into this not really knowing what was going to happen, and all the events that took place, everything about this was just so much fun. Definitely crazy. The ending had me. I was very shook by the ending. I did not see it. I highly recommend this one, especially for October time. I think this one is going to be a really fun book. I definitely recommend if you want to get into horror, but don't want something super scary. This one is so much fun. It's not very scary, but you're going to get those like vibes from it. But this one kept me on edge. I just needed to know how it was all going to wrap up. I ended up giving this one a 4.25. Definitely recommend this one. And the last book I ended up reading in July was Fragile Sanctuary by Catherine Cowles. This one follows Rhodes and Anson. Rhodes, when she was really young, had a really bad house fire that ended up taking her parents and her sister. So she was the only one left surviving. And she had a best friend whose mom would take in foster kids. And luckily enough, Rhodes was able to join her best friend's family. And this story essentially takes place many years later. Rhodes decides that she's ready to finally move back and fix up her old family house that had the fire. And one of her foster brothers has a construction company that's going to fix the house for her. And that's where Anson comes in. He is one of the men that works on the construction crew that's going to be fixing her house. Anson has lots of secrets that Rhodes ends up learning, and this story ends up taking a turn that you're not going to really expect. Anson tries to stay away from Rhodes because he's very much kind of like a no relationship guy, but of course, he can't stay away and they end up developing like this little relationship, which I think happened a little too suddenly. I feel like the characters really didn't know each other enough to start developing the feelings that they did. But overall, I will say the twists that we get in this are a lot of fun. I do think having that mystery thrilling aspect to this, as well as the romance, was a lot of fun. But this one ended up being a 3.5. I'd recommend, and I'm really excited to keep going with this series. I'm hoping all of the books have like this thriller, mystery, romance vibe. And lastly, we have all of the books that I read in August. I did read 11 books this month, and the first was Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. This one is following Sally, who was adopted at the age of 6, And the story essentially takes place like many years later. I think she's in her 40s now. And something happens that ends up bringing her name to the spotlight. And lots of people are starting to call her a different name. And they're starting to talk about her past. And she has no memory of her past. Now she's curious about what happened in her past that everybody's talking about. Definitely trigger warning because this book can get a little dark and a little uncomfortable, but I do think that the concept of this was really interesting. I really enjoyed Sally's character. Because of her past, you can tell that it definitely, even though she doesn't remember it, it definitely left a mark on how she is now, her personality, her mannerisms, everything about her. It definitely makes sense why she is the way she is, but learning about her past and how everything comes together in the end is very interesting. This one was definitely a good one. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. We do get 2 different POVs in this one, which I think added so much to the story overall. This one, I highly recommend. It was a lot of fun. It turned out to be way better than I was expecting it to be. Next, I ended up reading the last 2 books in the Rebel Blue series, Lost and Lassoed and Wild and Wrangled. Overall, both of these were a lot of fun. I did enjoy Lost and Lassoed a lot more than Wild and Wrangled. Lost and Lassoed follows Teddy and Gus. This one gives off the best like enemies to lovers vibes. Teddy and Gus have always hated each other, but they also have a history. I absolutely love their relationship, their tension, everything about them was so good. Gus's daughter also loved her, and her relationship with Teddy was just so cute. This book was so good. If not my favorite in the series, I did give this one 4 stars. I highly recommend this one. Wild and Wrangle follows Camille and Dusty. Camille co-parents with Gus. This one's like a second chance friends to lovers kind of vibe. Camille and Dusty dated in high school. Something happens, they end up breaking up, and now essentially we're following their rekindling of their relationship. I don't know why, because I usually love like a second chance, especially friends to lovers romance, but this one just didn't hit very well for me. This one was a 3.5. Something about this just felt so rushed in comparison to the other books, and they're not very long by any means, but I still enjoyed it, and I really loved the ending of this one. We get a little extra story that's called The Wedding, and it's following Emmy's wedding, which is the character we follow in the first book. I really love this series. I'd highly recommend it. If you like a small town cowboy romance, this is such a good one, but I'd highly recommend the series. The next book I ended up reading was Garden of Earthly Bodies by Sally Oliver. This one I ended up reading in my blind date with a book video. I went to a bookstore in Austin and I told my boyfriend to pick a book for me, and this was the book that was in that blind date with a book. The back of this one made this book sound like it was going to be so good. I had such high hopes. I went into this book completely blind. This one is following Marianne, who one day notices that she has these weird black hairs growing down the spine of her back. And she goes to the doctor. The doctor comes to the conclusion that Marianne just suffered a very traumatic experience by losing her sister in a very tragic way. And the stress of all of that is what is causing these hairs to kind of grow. So they believe that her going to need is going to help her. So this story is essentially following that. I think the biggest reason that this book did not hit for me is because the back of the book is so misleading. By the back of the book, you're given the impression that a lot of the story is going to take place at this need rehabilitation center. And it's not until a little bit more than halfway through the book that we even end up there. And we're actually going back and forth between past and present in each of the chapters. A lot of the past chapters were just not necessary. We get so much detail about Marianne's parents that when you end up reading it, just in the end, don't even matter. And I feel like a lot of this story would have been so much better if we had maybe one chapter that kind of like summarized what all of the past chapters were essentially alluding to. And then the rest of the story just take place at the hospital. But we don't really get that. Also, the ending kind of took on this magical element that really wasn't present throughout the rest of the story. So it just felt kind of out of place. I don't know. I just didn't really like it. So this one was a 2.75. I don't think I would ever recommend this to anybody, but I think everyone should develop their own opinion on books. So if it still sounds interesting to you, definitely give it a try. You might actually like it, but this just wasn't for me. The next book I ended up picking up was actually The Situationship by Abby Jimenez. This is more novella, but I'm hoping it leads to a book because this was so much fun, and I absolutely need their full story. We're following Maddie, who is a travel nurse and friends with the main character that we get in Just for the Summer, and Doug, who is best friends to Daniel that we get in the first book, Part of Your World. So this one is following Maddie and Doug, how they meet and how their relationship essentially starts. I think this was like 70 pages. It's not very long. I just picked it up because I saw it and I love Abby Jimenez, so I want to read anything and everything that she puts out. But this one was just a 3-star. It's just a novella, so nothing crazy, but it made me really excited for their story. The next book I ended up picking up was Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabrielle Garcia Marquez. This book was book club book pick for August, and this one was not that good. It's like meant to be a romance, but nothing about this felt good. It wasn't good. I gave this about a 2-star. I just personally didn't like it, and I'm curious to know if it's because the translation that just made this fall flat, but I just personally didn't really like it. This story follows Florentino and Fermina. Both of them met when they were really young, and they kind of like fall in love, but Fermina ends up marrying somebody else because her dad wants her to marry, somebody worth her, so she ends up marrying the doctor, and they're together for years, and her husband ends up dying, and Florentino sees this as his opportunity to rekindle the love that they had when they were younger. Kind of like gives off this, you were always the one and I've never settled down, because there was always that hope they would end up together. But at this point, they're very old. Fermina, I think, is in her 70s, and Florentino is like in his 80s. So they're very old, but the story essentially follows how they meet and the many years that Fermina is married and Florentino is not. Florentino's character is just not good. It's just not good. He gives very icky vibes, and his whole thing is that he had over 600 love interests in that time. But also, lots of questionable things happen, and I don't know, this was a 2-star for me. I don't think I would recommend this one, but this is kind of considered a classic, I do believe, so a lot of people do rave about this one, but it did not sit well with me at all. But yeah, 2 stars. Next, I ended up reading It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan. I love her writing, her stories, her summer romances, they just hit. And this one also hit very well. This one, what I loved is that it gave a small town vibe, even though our characters are from Los Angeles. This book is following Jane and Dan. They have like a run-in that didn't end very well, and now they kind of like have this like almost rivals vibe to them. Jane and Dan both found the script for a movie that they both really like and want to make a movie, but the company that they both work for don't think it's commercial enough, so they don't think it's going to get greenlit for production. Jane in her past used to be a child actor, and she claims to know this very famous singer Jack, who could write a original song for this movie to hopefully get it greenlit for production. Her and Dan essentially go on this little trip to New Jersey to kind of find him and convince him to create this song for the movie. And we're essentially following that little excursion, and it was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy this. At first, Jane's character was a little bit annoying to me, and I didn't really like her, but she definitely grew on me. She got better, and I absolutely loved Dan's character. This was just a perfect summer romance. We get small town vibes, we get coastal vibes, we get that summery, beachy vibe. This just hit so well. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Just another Annabelle Monaghan book that just hit, and I would highly recommend. The next book I ended up picking up was One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. Yet another perfect summer romance. The vibes of this were just so good. It made me want a beach house by the lake so that I can spend my summers. We are following Alice and Charlie. Charlie is the brother to Sam, who we see in the first book Every Summer After. So we do get to see them in this book, which was kind of nice. Alice ends up going with her grandmother to stay at the lake house while she recovers from a surgery that she had. And of course, Charlie's the boy across the lake who she ends up developing a friendship with and then a relationship. But overall, this one just gave perfect summer vibes. This one was 4 stars. Definitely recommend if you want to get in one last summer read before it's officially fall. Definitely read this one. It was a lot of fun. The next book I picked up was Run by Blake Crouch. We're following this epidemic that was causing people to become so full of rage that they just started killing. And we're following this family who is essentially trying to escape the rage and the crime and everything. And they hear that there is like a safe haven in Canada. So they're trying to essentially get there. And we're following the family's journey. And there are slow parts in this that do kind of like take up some of the book. Not everything is action packed in this, but nothing super crazy. I do think that what kind of fell flat for me is the ending. I feel like we really didn't get much of a resolution. Everything just kind of stops. And then we get one chapter that kind of like tries to explain what happened, but it doesn't really do that. So I feel like I was left with questions at the end of this, but I still did kind of enjoy it. The writing in this is also kind of different. It felt very choppy, but I still did enjoy this and I do still recommend it. I gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't as good as his other books for me, but I still enjoyed it. The next book I ended up picking up was The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark. This one had been sitting on my TBR for like, I kid you not, maybe 2 years. A friend sent this to me and I just never got around to reading it. And I'm so mad at myself for waiting so long to read it because this one was so much fun. We are following 2 different POVs in this. We're following Meg, who is a con artist, and Kat, who is a reporter who's been following Meg for a while, and she was trying to develop a story on her. Meg, she is a girl's girl. She was just so much fun to follow. I absolutely loved her character. The way that this ends was so much fun. I just thoroughly enjoyed this. This was a 4-star read. If you have heard about this book, if you have seen this book, if you have this book and you have not picked it up yet, I highly recommend you pick it up because this book was a page turner. It was so much fun to read. It does have some tough topics in here though, so do be aware of that. If there are some things that are triggering for you, I would look up some triggers, but this was honestly such a page turner. I had so much fun reading this and I'm so mad that it took me so long to read this. And the last book that I read in August was Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. This was my final most anticipated summer release. And I was able to squeeze it in before the end of August. And I'm so glad I did because Ashley Poston is one of my favorite authors. Her stories, the way they include an element of magic in them is just so much fun. This story follows Joni, who is a songwriter, and she's written a lot of hits for very famous singers, but she just never wanted to be a singer herself. She just loves writing music. And she finds herself in like a creative rut. She can't write anymore. And it has a lot to do with her mom. And her mom's going through health issues that has her essentially kind of wanting to be home, but also wanting to stay in Los Angeles because that's where her mom and her parents essentially want her to be because she's doing so well. She ends up going home for the summer to be with her family. And she ends up starting to hear this man's voice in her head and this melody that she and he can hear and they can communicate in thoughts. And he ends up traveling to where she is so that they can meet and figure out why they could hear each other's thoughts and how they can essentially get it to stop. The concept of them being linked by this melody and hearing each other's thoughts and finding a way to like break that bond that they have for some reason and like why they have this bond, why were they chosen, what's the link? Like this was so much fun. I think this one was definitely better than her last book. It's a novel love story, but this ended up being a 4-star for me. If you've liked Ashley Poston's work in the past, I definitely think you're going to enjoy this one. This one is a summer-esque vibe, so definitely read in the summertime, but this one was so much fun. But those were the 30 books that I read in the months of May, June, July, and August. I read a lot of great books throughout these months, and I can't believe that 4 more months have gone by already, and we only have 4 more months left of the year. It's kind of crazy, but I'm so excited for the books that I have to read in September, October, November, and December. We will be doing our last wrap up for those 4 months in December, but as always, I would love to hear your thoughts on any of these books. So if you read any of these books, please leave me a comment letting me know what your thoughts were, which books you loved or hated, and just share with me any of your favorite books that you read in the months of May, June, July, or August, because I would love to know what books you guys loved that I haven't read yet. But I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I would love it if you would like, comment, subscribe. My links are down below if you would like to follow me on Instagram or TikTok because I do post there as well. But as always, I do hope you guys enjoyed, and I do hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!